All right. Helen and I have come up to visit with Sharon up in Kitchener here, and just she's not able to come down to the church for the retirement, and we'll do a little interview on that. But first thing, we wanted to give some flowers to Sharon on behalf of the church, and so my wife is going to present them. We
There you
brought
go,
these
Sharon.
up.
We love you, and
Thank you
hope
very
you'll
much.
enjoy those flowers.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
I don't know if you want to hold those the whole time, or
I
if you want to
can
give them back to
take
Helen.
I can take them.
That was quick.
That's all right.
Thank
Here we
you.
go.
Anyway,
dear.
it really is a pleasure to be able to be here and be able to visit with you. And what's your connection? I know that you're sent out from Central, but what are your family connections? Who are the connections that you have through Central, so that people know? Because I didn't really realize all the connections you had at the church either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was born and raised at Central.
Mm-hmm.
So both my parents were members of Central before my brother and I were born. So,
And they are who? Who
my
are
parents.
the?
My parents.
Yeah.
Clinton Gloria Dickinson.
Okay.
Clinton Gloria Dickinson, and I'm sure there's people at Central that there may be a few older people at Central that would know me, and from years ago, but probably many more new people that wouldn't know me. So, so we were born. Both my brother and I were born and raised at Central. Grew up in the youth program and all the things, Pioneer Girls and everything like that.
So Bailey Dickinson then is
My uncle, my dad's youngest brother.
all right, and Gib and Marilyn are
Gib is my brother,
okay.
and Marilyn is my sister-in-law.
Okay.
And
Good.
yeah,
Good. Now, how many? I know we're going to get to this a little bit more, but how many years did you serve as a missionary altogether, and how old were you when you first started?
okay. After I graduated from Ontario Bible College, I worked at the college for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And during those 3 years was when I applied with Wycliffe Bible Translators. So when I first went out, I would have been about 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And first went to Papua New Guinea in 1980.
Mm-hmm. And how did you decide on serving with Wycliffe instead of another mission?
Actually, it was the connection with Central, with the missionaries. Of course, Hazel Wrigglesworth was with Wycliffe, and I had many of the missionaries that went out from Central that were they were certainly
A big influence, and you
big
wanted
influence,
to
yeah,
follow that way?
but one thing I do remember, after I graduated from high school, I couldn't find work. I was working. I tried to find a job after I graduated and couldn't find anything. And at the time, there was a bunch of my friends and I would sit. This was down when the church was on Brand Ave, and we sat on chairs in the back, in the back of the auditorium, and I was sitting right at the end, and it was the night we were saying farewell to Keith and Ann Donald. They were returning to Africa, and Keith had spoken and was telling all the different needs that they had on the field, and it was always the same. We need nurses and doctors and all kinds of different occupations. But he said, you know who we need more than anybody else, and that's somebody that can sit at a typewriter and type and answer the phone and do all the clerical work and that hadn't even struck me as being a need before. And so all my friends that were sitting with me, it's like they knew that I had been looking for, couldn't find anything. It's like they said, when he said that, it was 1, 2, 3, everybody look at Sharon. And so it was, I knew that at that time that the Lord was calling me into missions. And so I know Keith and Ann are still at Central, and so Keith, I think I've told Keith that before, that he was very influential in getting me going, at least to missions. Now, as far as Wycliffe is concerned, I got to know Hazel a little bit, and I knew I wouldn't be a translator, but because of the needs that Wycliffe have for what they call support workers, which included any kind of office
Mm-hmm.
and clerical work. And so that was the direction I went then.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that your ministry changed over the years, or
It
no?
did. When I was in Papua New Guinea, it was pretty much all secretarial work. I was secretary for one of our 3 directors, branch directors. And but then when I changed and moved to the Philippines, they needed somebody to be the assistant to one of our academic directors. And so I was still doing the regular secretarial work. By that time we had computers,
Mm-hmm.
older computers, but then I was working in Manila. And Manila was a big city to me after living in Brantford, and after I had gone from Papua New Guinea, which I worked at the center there, and it was reasonably small. I just didn't get along very well in the big city of Manila. So I asked, when I came back for my second term, I asked if I could move to one of our 2 centers, and I knew that they needed a librarian at our southern center, and because the librarian there had retired. And so so that when I came back after my first furlough in the Philippines, I moved to the Southern Center, and I was doing library work there for about 4 years. And then our head librarian that was over all 3 of our branch libraries
Mm-hmm.
had to leave, and so they asked me to move back to Manila. So what took me down south to our smaller center brought me back to Manila. But by that time I'd had enough experience living in the country, so I was able to manage living in Manila by that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Now you went over as a single woman
I did.
and served there many years as a single person in that.
Mhm.
But you ended up getting married to Eric McGrath. And was he somebody you met when you came back on furlough or something, or?
Well, I knew the Thompson family, which some of the people at Central would know about the connections there. Vic and Dorothy Thompson were my parents' generation, and they were strong supporters when I first went, from the very first, when I went out in 1980. And so they kept in touch with me and told me all their family news, because I knew Pat and Betty and John Thompson. And then they just continued sending me news about the family, and I knew that I had known Pat and Eric for many years, and had met Eric, I guess, whenever we were up at NBC for vacation, because he was always up there with Pat and the kids that they had, and so I kind of got to know them a little bit. And then when Pat came down with cancer, they were keeping me abreast of what her
Mm-hmm.
situation was. And so when she finally passed away in 2005, I was continuing to write to Eric and Pat, and so it just continued on with writing to Eric, and he kept writing to me, and eventually it was phone calls,
Mhm.
and so he knew that I was coming home for furlough in 2006, and so he said, well, maybe we can connect and get together,
And the rest is history.
and the rest is history.
And he ended up going back to the field with you for about 5 years, or
No, we were only there for about 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Okay.
Eric had some health issues, and he was in and out of hospital a couple of times with infections and various things. And we had come home. We had planned to stay in the Philippines for about 10 years. That would be when he turned 70. And then we were going to come home and get involved in some other kind of ministry here at home. But we came home for about 5 months, just to connect with people here, we went back in, September, I guess, no, at the end of August, we came back to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed away 2 weeks later.
Mm.
He was fine when we went to bed at night, but he didn't wake up in the morning.
I see.
And so
Woke up with the Lord.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it must have been a sad time, and you were 25 years single, it sounds like, and then got married, and then he's been gone for a number of years now. So when did you come back from the Philippines to be here in a semi-retirement, or at least withdrawing yourself from the Philippines?
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
Okay, he passed away in 2011, and the branch in the Philippines said I'd be welcome to come back because they could still use me. But I felt at that time, I was getting towards closer to 60 by then, and I felt like, maybe I need to come home and get myself settled here.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to settle here in Kitchener. So, because Eric and I had lived here for a couple of years after we got married, and I kind of got to know the city a little bit. So I came home after he passed away, and I did have to make another trip back because to arrange to ship my things home.
Right.
And to sell our vehicle. And so I moved back here, I guess in 2012 is
Mhm.
when I finally got
Okay.
myself settled here
Yep.
in Kitchener. And we had our church membership here, and
Mhm.
I just got back into life here
Mhm.
here at home again. And
Now, we'll be having probably a number of people that are watching the service and watching this, and in particular young people. You were influenced when you were a young person, and I wonder if there's anything that you feel that you could say to some of the young people, or young adults, that are just wondering, maybe, where does the Lord want me, and how can I be serving God in that? So would you have any sort of thoughts or words that you'd like to share that might encourage some of them to look, but also to maybe, certainly seriously consider foreign missions that they can be involved in?
mm-hmm. There's certainly, of course, I'm most familiar with Wycliffe, and there's no end of opportunities for. I'm a prime example because I just didn't think there was anything other than translating the Bible.
Mhm.
That was all they did, but I didn't realize that there were needs in my area as well as. We have aviation program. We have, of course, with computers, doing a lot of the work now. We need a lot of computer tech people. There's just no end of what
Different skill sets that are needed,
exactly,
right?
exactly, and there's just all kinds of opportunities, and we can be. I often when I shared when I came home for furlough and I was sharing with people, I was saying, it's God calls us into ministry. We don't have to be sent overseas. There's all kinds of opportunities here at home, and the only difference is geography. And but there's just just endless opportunities to serve the Lord, whether it's here at home or if He calls you into ministry overseas. There's just all kinds of opportunities, and it hasn't changed over the years. There possibly there are different things now than there were even 25 years ago, but many opportunities for people to be involved in ministry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Any last things you want to say to folks before we sign off?
I certainly have appreciated the connection I've had with Central over the years. After all, I was born and raised in Central, and so, and they were the ones that had the influence that influenced me into missions in one way or another. I didn't even mention in my experience. I had the fellowship had a what they call a SWIFT program, and I was able to be in, that was really my first missionary experience, and I went to Japan in '75, and it's just that Central has been so supportive over the years, whether it was with their finances, that certainly was big, but I also said when I was sharing that if I didn't have the prayer support, it wouldn't matter. It's the prayer support that kept me going a lot of times, and I knew that many people were praying for me. That was evident over time and time again. Things that happened, my experiences over the years. I knew that people were praying, and I was just so appreciative of the support that I received from Central over the years.
Excellent. Well, folks, it could be that God is calling one of you the same kind of ministry that Sharon's been involved in, or something completely different. But the main thing is, are you willing, and are you available to be able to do this? If God is calling you to it, then He'll certainly help you to accomplish His will. But we have to be willing in the first place. So thank you very much, Sharon. It's been wonderful to be able to visit with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
God bless.
Thanks.